We're good to go.
Hi, welcome to our debate, tele-ABA versus in-home ABA. We're just going to start out going through some introductions. So I'll start. My name is Anna. I will be the introducer for this group. And for my experience, I have worked with kids with autism on the spectrum for about a year and a half out of their homes. So whoever would like to go next can introduce themselves.
I can go next. Hi, I'm Samantha. I am the researcher for this debate group.
All right, hi, I'm Amy, and I'm going to be the summarizer for the tele-ABA telehealth section, and I currently work in a center where we do one-on-one therapy as well as some in-home therapy, but I have never experienced or really known anyone who's done tele-ABA.
Hi, I'm Yanan. I'm from San Francisco, California. I'm the summarizer for ABA in-home session. I've been working as a behavior therapist for about 2 years now. I mostly do one-on-one in-home session, but I also work at the center for my company.
I'm Kelsey. I'm from San Diego, California. I am going to be the researcher and illustrator for in-home ABA, and the experience I've had is one-on-one as well as recreational programs with kids with autism.
All right, so now just to give you a little bit background on both, telehealth is basically therapy that's done over the internet. The behavior analysts will talk with the parent over the internet, and they can talk pretty much about any standard thing, so how the kiddo is doing, how to do procedures for different programs, anything like that. Whereas in-home ABA, it's usually the professional or the therapist that will be providing in the in-home ABA services. So then a little bit about the points that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about family involvement because obviously the parent has slightly a bigger role in telehealth. They're going to be the ones who are providing therapy, and but in in-home ABA, parents can still do programs and they still can get involved, and they have a very big role as far as kind of how things can go, and they have a say in basically what's best for their kiddo, and I think that's a very, very important part of both of them. So next we're going to talk about accessibility. So these things include things like travel time, flexibility as far as schedules go, cost effectiveness, and just where the professionals are and where the parents' roles are, because they vary differently from both different types of therapy. Finally, we're going to talk about professional involvement because of how the behavior analyst gets involved, because the behavior analyst is at a distance, they don't have as much control as they do as if they were working in-home. So that's another major point to talk about. So now we can move on to Amy, who will talk about tele-ABA.
All right, so as Anna said, tele-ABA, otherwise known as telehealth, is essentially therapy over the internet. So the way this would kind of look is a BCBA sets up therapy with a client that is unable to receive services in a center or directly in-home with either a therapist or a BCBA due to a variety of reasons. So maybe this is mom and dad are unable to travel, or for some learners that are in rural settings, they're unable to travel to a location to receive therapy. So this is a really great way that learners who may otherwise not be able to receive any therapy at all can receive services. So kind of our first point to talk about, one of the key points about either of our therapies is parental involvement. So with tele-ABA, when a parent agrees to this kind of therapy, they become the primary therapist for their own learner. So the learner will take direction from their parent behaviorally with the intervention that they're carrying out. And the parent really learns to be involved in their therapy. So whether this is with data collection, treatment fidelity, all of these things the parent is learning how to do. So this is really important to increase parent confidence, so the parent becomes their sole provider and really becomes a learning experience for them too. In addition, the parent overall will develop their skills as not only a primary caregiver, but also as someone who's around them a lot. This can be really useful for not only the current intervention they're doing, but for interventions in the future. So if this learner ends up receiving services for the next 3 years, the parents may learn what something like functional communication training is during their first session, and then 2 years later they may only need a little bit of a refresher, but they're able to provide those services for their own child. So it allows a really neat opportunity for parents to be involved. And then I'm going to pass this off to Samantha to provide some additional research.
Okay. For family involvement, it allows the parents to be involved in therapy, increase potential confidence and skills, and says Bosford and Hall, 2013. Another one is a study detailing parents' treatment fidelity showed noticeable results, decreased behavior, and increased functional communication training while using telehealth for parent training. That was by Seuss et al., 2014. And another research point for family involvement is if parents had to choose between no therapy and telehealth, even with technological difficulties, they would choose telehealth for their children. And that's Ashburner et al., 2016. War research regarding accessibility provides access to ABA therapy to individuals who may not have had the opportunity to get ABA therapy. It allows for early intervention services to be rendered with various benefits such as decreased travel cost, flexible schedules, increased parent skills. That's Resch and Oberliner, 2009. And this is some research that has been continued for telehealth ABA. As compared to in-home ABA therapy, telehealth ABA has lower costs, which makes it more accessible to people everywhere. That's Reschal and Oberliner, 2009. Wacker, Dolmau, Koppelman, Lindgreen, Cole, and Waldron, 2013. And the last research point would be advancements in technology have made many things possible through telehealth ABA, such as the type of skills that are being taught to the specific individuals, and that's Simon, 2001. Now we're going to discuss the research for in-home ABA sessions.
Thank you, Samantha. So for traditional in-home ABA sessions, as a lot of us are very familiar with, so there's always one therapist that will be there working with the kids, and normally either a caregiver or a parent is present at the home just to, in case the therapist needs something or the child is having a difficult time. As Amy mentioned, for telehealth ABA, the parents are the primary therapists for the kids. As far as parent involvement, in-home traditional in-home ABA session, the therapist is mainly the person that will be working with the kids directly. However, one of the biggest advantage of ABA session is that the parents and/or the caregiver can directly observe the sessions in their home. While watching well-trained therapists interact and work with their kids, the parents are able to pick up on some strategies in terms of how to deal with problem behavior that happen in the house when the therapists are not there. Excuse me. Not just the problem behaviors, parents are also able to learn how to interact and play with their kids in general through direct observations. From my experience, most kids with autism have difficulties communicating what they want, and they often resort to throwing tantrums, such as crying and then throwing toys. And a lot of the times, parents don't really know what to do in situations like that, and most of the time, it ends up with parents giving in because that simply stops the kids from being upset. And then with the ability to be involved in sessions and then constantly observe the therapist's interaction, parents gradually learn to build a more more nurturing relationship with their kids. So now I'm going to introduce Kelsey, who's going to provide more research to support parent involvement for in-home ABA session.
All right. So according to research, more opportunities for social interactions in the family settings is brought by in-home ABA sessions. So according to McPhilmy and Dillenberger, results showed that ABA-based interventions had a significant positive impact not only on the lives of the child, in particular in areas of communication, challenging behaviors, and independence, but also on the family as a whole and their overall quality of life. And then also Grindle found that through better play and communication skills, kids with autism were better able to connect with their siblings. So their siblings felt like they could more connect to their sibling with autism, and that they had more common ground to share and to interact with each other. So now I'm going to send it back to Amy for accessibility in tele-ABA.
All right, so one of the key points about either option is that the learners and the families are able to access any of their therapy needs in some way. So when we're talking about specifically tele-ABA, telehealth, they're accessing it via video, so it's not a standard means of therapy as most of us are used to, but it does have some great benefits. So with telehealth, their schedules are extremely flexible. So as a family, if they need to move a session, often it's easier to have someone over video that can just pop on at a different time, rather than when it's an in-home session, a lot of families would have to reschedule their portion, and then it could affect travel times. So if they have an hour drive into a center somewhere, this could be eliminated by doing a tele-ABA session. In addition, tele-ABA tends to be more cost-effective, so a session in-home costs a lot more than a session over tele-ABA. So for a lot of families, this is an additional financial benefit. For companies, the decreased travel time can be to their advantage as well as the families. So instead of having to reimburse their employees for travel time to the location and back, they additionally are able to get more therapy for other learners at different times. So overall, just a better time sensitive therapy method than doing in-home therapy. One kind of interesting aspect to think about with accessibility and telehealth is that the professionals are not in the center, or like in the environment that the learner is. So it is very something to consider for specific learners if it's appropriate for someone to be at a distance and not directly involved in the environment with the learner. So now I'm going to pass it on to Samantha, who will provide some research for accessibility in tele-ABA.
I think I messed up because I had read all of the research at once, and I think I should have split it up. Is that something you guys think I did wrong?
Yeah, and I think you'll be able to elaborate on the research a little bit more, so explaining like why those are important. But yeah, I think just you can keep on just pretending like we didn't do that before and just jump right back in.
I know, because I know we're practicing, so I just want to make sure, like, the regular,
You good?
That I'm sorry.
Don't worry, it's okay.
Okay. No, I can't find it. Okay. Okay, so it allows for early intervention services to be rendered with various benefits, such as decreased travel costs, flexible schedules, increased parent skills, and this is Raschel and Oberliner 2009. And I don't know who's next, I'm sorry.
Now I'm going to talk a little bit more about the accessibilities for in-home ABA session. As Amy mentioned, for telehealth, it is more flexible because parents can pick what time they want to do the therapy session. And for ABA session, not only we have to incorporate the parent schedule, but we also have to incorporate the availability of that specific therapist for that day. So a lot of the times it is less flexible, and some parents have to reschedule or cancel the session because of that, which might affect the continuous quality of their service. However, a lot of the times, I know a lot of the centers, they do center ABA sessions, so the parents can just drop off their kids there, and then they can go run errands, or they can do whatever that they need to do without physically being there with the kids for that entire session time. And as far as transportation, I know a lot of the companies, they offer transportation for families who aren't able to drive or who live at a further distance. So the other point that Amy brought up was the cost for the service. I know traditional ABA is more expensive. However, a lot of the times services are covered by insurance, regional center, or school district. So it makes it more affordable for a lot of the families, even the low-income families. So now I'm going to pass it to Kelsey, who's going to provide you with a little bit more research.
Okay, so like Yanan said, the ABA in-home sessions can be more expensive. For example, Wacker points out that for in-home ABA services per child, it costs about $335 per week in comparison to telehealth, which costs about $58 per week per child. However, you have to take into account that some of these families might not have computers for telehealth, or might not have the means to access telehealth services, and compared to parents who can have therapists or can go to a regional center and get these services. So the costs might even each other out. Yanan also brought up that the schedules with families aren't as a little bit more flexible, which can lead to familial stress. So parents reported that almost a third of parents interviewed reported that their relationship had deteriorated, usually because the couple did not spend enough time together. And this could deal with having therapists coming in, having to take their kids to therapy a couple times a week, as well as the siblings felt that they were receiving less attention with the child with autism as well, which could have the same effects as the parents not feeling that they spend enough time with each other, based on people coming in and out of their house and having to move to different places to receive certain services. So overall, the accessibility of in-home ABA is easier. However, it can cost a little bit more than telehealth, which can be accessible to some families. And then back to Amy.
All right, so our last element to analyze between the two approaches is professional involvement. So as future BCBAs, this is something that's important when we're providing services to a learner. There are many things that need to be considered. So we're always going to be connecting over video. So we always want to make sure that we have a good view of the learner in their environment, interacting with others, so that we can provide the services necessary that the learner needs. So when we're not seeing like the whole picture or everything that's going on, we may recommend services that aren't necessarily appropriate. So this is something that we'll need to evaluate on a learner-specific basis to see if it's appropriate. We also have less control of the environment, so we have to be directing the parents basically through a video screen, and for some parents this may be more challenging than others. Being able to provide feedback and constructive criticism to make them the best providers and supporters for their learner that they possibly can be. So in addition, when a therapist is actually in the home with the learner, they can alter the environment and manage behaviors. And being over a video screen, we can't do that. We just can't reach through the screen and help them or assist them. So this is also something to take into consideration when considering in-home or telehealth or tele-ABA for a learner, that our professional involvement may be hindered at some times. But again, at the same time, it means a learner receiving services versus not receiving services. That can be a really important consideration. So I'm going to pass it along to Samantha to provide some research on this.
Okay, so the advancements in technology have made many things possible through telehealth ABA, such as the type of skills that are being taught to the specific individual. So the parents could be involved in functional communication training, and they could learn that through the video and carry that over with their child years to come, which is really great. Okay, now I'm not sure at this point who goes next. I think I should write all this down so I know. Yeah.
Now I'm going to tell you all a little bit more about the professional involvement for ABA session, traditional in-home ABA session. As I mentioned earlier, for a traditional in-home ABA session, a well-trained therapist is always there to work with the kids. And on top of that, professionals such as BCBA are able to directly observe by doing overlaps. And then so this way they can participate in sessions and then make immediate changes to programs or the environment if necessary. So this way, you know, the BCBA can just come in and then they take all the data they need and then they can just make changes to the schedule. And then the therapists are the therapist should be trained to be able to apply those changes to the schedule, versus for telehealth, a BCBA might have to do additional training for the parents in order for them to be comfortable with, you know, implementing the new program for their kids. And then the other thing, the other point is that the therapist can work directly on behaviors that are happening in the natural environment, such as a home and a school, to decrease problem behaviors and increase productivities in those settings. So this way, the therapists are not only working in the house where the kids are most comfortable in, they can also work at a school or in the classroom or in the community outing. So wherever the wherever the kids need to work on their skills. But for telehealth, sometimes the settings could be limited to like just a home with the parents. So we don't have a lot of generalization as far as, you know, how do we make sure that the kids are generalizing all of the skills that they're learning to like the different settings. So right now I'm gonna pass this to Kelsey to provide you with a little bit more research on that.
All right, so through in-home ABA for professional involvement, professionals are able to directly observe their environment. So according to Bailey and Birch, if you have been trained to work with children with autism and have experience doing one-on-one in language acquisition and social skills training, you will probably be working in the children's home 2 to 4 hours a day. With this, in comparison to telehealth, is that you'll be able to be more hands-on and be able to address the behaviors at that moment in comparison to through video or through an email that the therapist might not be able to actually see or understand what the parent is trying to communicate. And then lastly, Bailey and Birch also mentioned that the behavior analysis then typically identifies the relevant people in the client's environment and will demonstrate the treatment, always approved by the key people that has been developed. So this is beneficial in that because the professional can come into the home and work directly with the family, they can address immediate needs or needs that come up without them being expected, and that more people are involved than just through distant communication. They can communicate right there on the spot. Lastly, let's see if this works. No, it does not work. Actually, let's see. Can you guys see that? Yeah? Okay. All right, so lastly, according to the charts, here is the practical benefits for the family of in-home ABA. So as you can see, 100% of mothers and 100% of fathers say that there is improved language and communication skills. 84% of mothers said there is improved social skills, as well as over 50% of mothers and fathers said there is practical benefits for the parents, and there's also more support in the home. Lastly, the chart also shows the impact of early intervention behavioral, and the parent-sibling relationship improved 41%, reported by mothers, but however, 16% of mothers reported parent-sibling relationship deteriorated, or 24% of fathers reported that parents' relationship deteriorated as well. So now I'm going to give it to Anna to conclude the debate.
So actually, I have one more visual to show you, so hold on a second. Hold on. Oh. Okay, I'm just going to show this visual. Can you guys see that? Okay.
Yeah.
So this just summarizes the advantages and disadvantages as far as telehealth goes. So we touched on a lot of these, like having support and building parent skills as far as accessibility goes with costs and travel time and whatnot, and flexibility. And then some things that are very important is that as far as disadvantages goes, is that you can run into technical difficulties. So you can have your internet go out, or, I mean, kind of like you said, if they don't have a computer, or if their computer breaks down, I mean, that's a situation that could totally happen. And the need for initial face-to-face service. So that's something that when the behavior analyst and the parent actually meet, if they don't have that, I feel like it almost provides a barrier, because there's something different about having face-to-face contact with somebody when you first meet them. I think when you just have that through a computer, it creates a little bit of some barriers. So that's just a summary of some of the points we've gone over and gives you some extra information. So now we're going to conclude it and just talk about basically how we talked about some advantages and disadvantages to both sides. I think they're very important to consider if you're a parent and you are considering which method to go about, because some methods may work better for certain parents and families, and some may not. then also we found that it is had pretty much similar effectiveness, and this was provided by, one second. This was provided by some research that we found by Wackerberg and Harding from 2004, and the percentages are very similar in how, as far as the reduction of the problem behavior. So for telehealth, it was 93.5%, and for in-home ABA, it was 94.14%. So I think as a group, we decided that these therapies would be pretty effective either way that you choose. So I think that's really important and really honestly cool, because it's opening a lot of doors for parents who couldn't get access to therapy via in-home ABA. So now we're going to open it up to the audience for as far as some questions go. So our first question is, what determines if the individual is skilled enough to provide services for the clients if training is done via telehealth? Who would like to take that question?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Sure. What determines if the individual is skilled enough to provide services for the clients if training is done via telehealth?
I personally would say that as long as a therapist is receiving the same amount of training as they would if they were an in-home therapist, that would likely be sufficient. But I think as far as providing any significant behavior changes or evaluating the effectiveness of interventions, it should be provided by a BCBA. Absolutely.
And I just wanted to add on top of that, I know for my company, we do treatment integrity checklist. So basically a BCBA goes into the client's house and then conduct overlaps for the therapist, just trying to see if the intervention is implemented correctly. And I think for telehealth, it should be done the same way, except it's through a video camera instead of in person. But it's also a way to make sure, you know, the parents is conducting all the procedures correctly, they're implementing all the programs correctly, and like Amy mentioned, if there's been a change in the program or the intervention, the BCBA should always make sure, you know, the parents have the necessary training or the skills to provide like the new intervention or to implement the new strategy. And you know, the BCBA should always be there to help the parents in case there's a problem or they have any concerns. So yeah, I think there are ways to do that.
Okay, and then we have another question. How do we observe and assess in treatment integrity on a regular basis to make sure that the treatment plan has been implemented correctly?
I think, like I mentioned before, just like in-home ABA session, treatment integrity checklist or you know, observations can be done through video camera or remotely for telehealth, and actually I think it would be more flexible. It would be easier for the BCBA to do such remote like observation, because parents have more flexible, or like telehealth, the schedule wise is more flexible because the BCBA doesn't have to incorporate the therapist schedule, the parent schedule, the kiddo schedule. So you know, it's always easier to facilitate anything through video versus, you know, us going into their house like physically. So I think that's definitely easier for the BCBA to facilitate. And you know, if anything, they can always do a quick video chat or a phone call to check in and then make sure, you know, everything is in place. Yeah.
All right, that looks like all of the questions we have for today. Thank you again for joining us in this debate, and have a great day.